Welcome to Red Gun Barbecue. I'm owner pitmaster Martin Goffin, and this is Mastering the Cow. Why mastering the cow? Well, I think this is an opportunity to talk about the cow in barbecue terms. Here at Red Gun Barbecue, we've got an ethos around being an ethical business. So this means using grass-fed beef. What does this mean? What does grass-fed mean versus grain-fed, for example? Well, a grass-fed beast is raised on grass. It's in the pasture, from the pasture, it goes to the abattoir, boner room, box, then send out barbecue restaurants. So why is it important? Well, cows are fundamentally meant to eat grass. It's a leaner cut. It's actually a little bit more difficult to cook grass-fed versus a grain-fed product. A grain-fed product has a lot more fat and has a lot more white fat. As you can see from this forequarter that I've got in front of me, this is a grass-fed piece of beef. You can see it's got yellow fat, where if you were looking at a grain-fed product, you'd be looking at a forequarter that's covered in a very bright white coloured fat. It's a lot more fatty in its essence, a grain-fed piece of beef. So it's actually, in terms of barbecuing at home, I would say a grain-fed product is actually easier to cook. But if you're cooking a grass-fed product, it's actually, you need to be a bit more skillful, a bit more delicate about how you go about cooking that piece of beef. So fundamentally, the reason why we do it is that we believe that cows should be fed grass. We think it produces a much more natural flavoured piece of meat. And also, one of the big things around grain production is that it's slowly killing the planet. So what happens when they produce grain? The grain is then used to feed cattle. The grain grown in the ground makes that ground arid and very difficult once it's had a lot of grain grown on it to become fertile again. And then this grain is shipped around the planet to all these different locations to feed cattle. And essentially, in that process, it's producing a lot of carbon emissions. You know, it's not been very good for the environment and the planet and the earth that it's grown. So that's a big issue with grain-fed, in our opinion. Also, once these cows have got to a certain weight, they all start out in pasture and then they get sent to a feedlot where they spend 100 days, 200 days being fed grain. You know, this environment isn't like being in the pasture. You know, it's intensive factory farming of cattle. So we like to use grass-fed. This is a thing that we've always done since day dot, and it's something that we will continue to do. And we're really passionate about this, so that's why I'd like to talk about these things. Here at Red Gun Barbecue, the type of cattle that we like to use is from British breeding stock. And when I talk about British breeding stock, I'm talking about Angus and Herefordshire. These are the two type of cattle that we like to cook up here at Red Gun. And this is what we've used since day dot as well. So, British breeding stock, Angus, Herefordshire. Then you've got to look at what size beast are we using. So we like to use 5 kilo plus briskets here at Red Gun, and these generally come off 300 kilo plus bodies. And when we're looking at grading and classification around beef, you want to be looking at something in Australian standards, which is YP, which is a beast which is about 36 months of age. It's given us plenty of time for this beast to put on plenty of muscle, plenty of fat, and produces a wonderful brisket then to cook. So you've looked at your classification label and you've found your brisket. Well, where does this brisket come from on the beast? The brisket comes from the forequarter. This is a grass-fed forequarter, and the brisket sits underneath the shank. So this is the shank, or the shin, and this under here, this is your brisket. That's your point end brisket. It goes through to your navel end brisket. It's a working muscle. This brisket helps keep this animal up on its feet. It takes a very long time to cook low and slow. So the other thing that we like to use on the cow is the beef short ribs. The short ribs come from this cut, and it sits roughly around about here, in between the chuck and the rib. And its bones, the bones that we use are 5, 6, 7. and these are really meaty bones. If you keep going down the body, the bones are going to start to thin out, and that layer of muscle is going to start to thin out. So another perfect cut for low and slow off the beef forequarter is the chuck or the shoulder. This cut is perfect for low and slow. There's lots of interconnective tissues, lots of marbling. It'll take a long time at low temperature to break down. Also, on this forequarter beef, you've got all your blade muscles, so your bowler blade, your oyster blade, they all sit up in this area of the forequarter where your scapula is or your shoulder blade is, and these are all perfect as well for low and slow. Then you up the top, you've got your prime rib or your scotch. So that's your loin muscle that sits along the top of the spine, and that's in the forequarter as well. So we're going to flip this over, I'm going to count the bones, and I'm going to show you where our short ribs sit. So we've just successfully and gracefully flipped this beast over, just to show you the cavity. And what we're going to do, I want to show you where our beef short ribs come from. First of all though, this is your brisket, with your brisket bone on. So just here, you can see this is your point of your brisket running down. Usually brisket consists of 5 bones. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We chop it there, and that would be your point end brisket. And then from 5, so 5, 6, 7, these ribs here would be your beef short ribs. And these are what we use at Red Gun Barbecue. And we find that these ribs are the most meaty. Then your scotch is up here, feather bones, they get all taken off. And that's the cow, essentially. So that was mastering the cow. If you've liked what you've seen, give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. We make plenty of videos here at Red Gun Barbecue, so I'll see you on the next one.